Corruption, the disease that eats away at the body of any nation, wasting its resources and stealing its future. According to Transparency International, more than 6.8 billion people, about 85% of the world's population, live in countries where corruption is a significant danger. Today, we will take a journey around the world and look at the countries on the blacklist of the top 10 most corrupt in 2025, according to the famous Corruption Perceptions Index. We will understand the meaning of these numbers, learn how corruption destroys entire countries, its relationship to the climate crisis the whole world is suffering from, and what solutions are available. Before we go through the list, we must understand how corruption is measured in the first place. The Corruption Perceptions Index, published annually by Transparency International, is the most famous measure of perceived public sector corruption in 180 countries. The index does not record actual cases of corruption because they are difficult to collect, but relies on expert opinions and surveys to measure their perceptions of corruption. Scores range from 0 to 100, where 0 means highly corrupt and 100 means very clean. In 2024, the global average stood at 43, a dangerous sign that the fight against corruption is stagnant and there is no progress. You might ask, what is the relationship between corruption and climate? The answer? A very bad one. The organization's report showed that corruption seriously hinders efforts to combat climate change. Corruption blocks strong climate policies, steals money from climate projects, and lobbies in favor of oil and coal companies. Imagine that billions of dollars in climate funds could be stolen or misused. Worse yet, the countries most affected by climate change are themselves corrupt or weak, so their populations face a dual threat: the danger of climate and the danger of corruption. Let's take a look at the list based on data from the 2025 Corruption Perceptions Index. 1. South Sudan. Corruption score 8 out of 100. The most corrupt in the world. It gained independence from Sudan in 2011, making it the world's newest country and #1 in corruption. A country threatened by war, poverty, internal conflicts, devastating economic crises, collapsed state institutions, weak rule of law, and the dominance of military elites over natural resources. Corruption there destroys any hope of building strong state institutions or even providing basic services to its people due to a persistent lack of political stability since independence. 2. Somalia. Corruption score 9/100. An Arab country in the Horn of Africa, it has suffered from a long civil war and the collapse of the state and infrastructure after decades of conflict. Armed groups and militias control state resources, and there is a lack of transparency in managing international aid. Climate change is destroying agriculture there, exacerbating the problem and leaving people neglected and in greater need as the country relies almost entirely on foreign aid. Poverty and unemployment are widespread at very high rates. 3. Venezuela. Corruption score 10 out of 100. A country in South America with vast oil reserves, but economic and political crises have destroyed the country. The dominance of ruling elites over the oil sector, hiding financial data, economic crisis, and the collapse of the national currency have encouraged bribery, the entrenchment of an authoritarian system, and the suppression of opposition. Organized corruption ensures money goes to a small few while people suffer from hunger, medicine shortages, a deteriorating healthcare system, high poverty rates, and millions have fled to neighboring countries. 4. Syria. Corruption score 12 out of 100. An Arab country torn apart by civil war since 2011. Infrastructure and government institutions have been destroyed by the war. Militias and armed groups control economic resources, and there is widespread black market activity, smuggling of antiquities and goods. After years of war, state institutions in Syria are either weak or operate for the benefit of specific individuals. Corruption is rampant even in reconstruction and aid, prolonging people's suffering. It is facing the world's worst humanitarian crisis, with more than half the population displaced, a collapsed economy, and essential services disrupted. 5. Equatorial Guinea. Corruption score 1300. A country in Central Africa and one of the richest in oil on the continent. Yet wealth does not reach the people due to the dictatorship of the ruling system and the concentration of oil wealth in the hands of the ruling family. Revenues are concentrated among a small clique around the power structure. Reports indicate theft and mismanagement of state funds, a lack of transparency in oil revenues, no accountability mechanisms, suppression of press freedoms, and the prevention of any independent oversight. Despite a high GDP, most of the population lives in extreme poverty, amid human rights violations and youth fleeing the country. 6. Eritrea. Corruption score 13 out of 100. A country in the Horn of Africa with a closed, militaristic political system. It is an isolated country ruled by a strict regime. Its authoritarian political system prevents any transparency or accountability, and corruption is very high without any oversight, because the military controls the economy and natural resources. Its international isolation and lack of a free press have caused widespread human rights violations and the mass exodus of youth due to a complete lack of opportunities. 7. Libya. Corruption score 13 out of 100. An Arab country rich in oil. After the fall of Gaddafi's regime in 2011, the country has been in a war between two governments and several militias, all vying for control of the oil sector and cross-border smuggling. The absence of a unified government capable of enforcing the law, state collapse, and competing governments. Corruption and oil looting fuel the conflict. The disaster of the dam collapses in Derna in 2023 due to neglect and corruption is a stark example. There is ongoing security instability and a deterioration of basic services like electricity and healthcare. 8. Yemen. Corruption score 13 out of 100. An Arab country in the south of the Arabian Peninsula, suffering from civil war since 2015. War and corruption have destroyed Yemen. Ongoing armed conflict, foreign interventions, and the control of armed groups over international aid and food resources have led to economic and governmental collapse. Warring parties exploit humanitarian aid, and civilians are caught in the middle, causing the worst humanitarian crisis in the world according to the UN. Famine and diseases are widespread. 9. Nicaragua. Corruption score 14 out of 100. According to previous reports, the exact score wasn't mentioned in current search results, but it is among the worst. A country in Latin America where governance is highly centralized and the opposition is oppressed. Power is concentrated in the hands of President Daniel Ortega. The opposition is suppressed. There is a lack of transparency in government deals and public projects. Democratic freedoms are deteriorating, and drug trafficking is prevalent. In this case, corruption spreads without anyone being held accountable, leading to economic decline, high poverty rates, and thousands fleeing due to political repression. 10. Sudan. Corruption score 15 out of 100, according to previous reports. An Arab country in Africa that suffered under the long rule of Omar al-Bashir and military coups. Sudan concludes the list. The civil war between the army and the rapid support forces has destroyed the country. Internal conflicts in Darfur and elsewhere have increased. The economy relies on foreign aid with a lack of transparency. Corruption was one of the causes of the war, as factions fight for control of resources and wealth. Despite recent political changes, corruption remains entrenched, and there are severe economic crises and widespread poverty. Important notes: these lists are not just numbers. There are important conclusions. Corruption and war. All these countries are either at war or experiencing instability. Corruption and war feed each other. Human cost. Corruption here is not just a small bribe. It equals hunger, death, unemployment, and a lack of treatment or shelter. Authoritarianism and corruption. There is a clear link between dictatorial rule and corruption. Democratic countries have much higher integrity scores than authoritarian ones. Even other countries have problems. Corruption doesn't only exist in poor countries. Even developed countries are seeing declines. Decline in the West. Countries like the USA, 65, Canada, 75, Austria, 67, and the UK, 71, have seen their scores drop long-term. This is a sign that fighting corruption is difficult even in stable countries. Lobbying. Legal corruption, or the influence of oil lobbies on climate policies, is a significant danger. Danger for environmental defenders. Unfortunately, almost all killings of environmental activists, over 1,013 since 2019, occurred in countries scoring below 50 on the index. Heroes are being killed because of corruption. How can we stop corruption? Nothing is impossible. There is hope, and organizations like Transparency International and civil society activists are leading the fight. Transparency. Demand transparency in government contracts and budgets. Supporting institutions. Support the independence of the judiciary, anti-corruption bodies, and a free press. Global accountability. Use international tools to track stolen money and recover it. The role of youth. Young people can play a major role in spreading integrity and changing the future. In the end, corruption is a difficult challenge, but it is not impossible. The list we saw today is not to judge the peoples of these countries, but to highlight the problem and encourage global action. Fighting corruption is part of our battle for a better and fairer future. As Transparency International said, the world's most vulnerable people are in desperate need of this action. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to receive all new updates. Share the video to increase awareness.